To Mr. Weatherby, the project director. From Alex Nessa, an A2 expert. The date today is February 26, 2014. This is a response to the student-to-teacher ratio in Iowa. Introduction. In 1999, the student-to-teacher ratio in Iowa began to decrease, meaning that the ratio is going from a higher ratio to a lower ratio. As you can see by the two graphs, the students are bouncing up and down, but the general direction is down, and the opposite is for the teachers. The student-to-teacher ratio graph in the bottom right proves my point, saying that the ratio is going down. The ideal ratio is 15 students to 1 teacher, and it is already below that, and it is continuing to decrease. When you divide the students by teachers, you will get a graph below. When you take the equations and divide them, you will get one of the graphs shown later in the presentation, such as the quadratic, cubic, or linear. Now, this is a linear graph. As you see by the data, it is constantly going down and will never go up. This graph does not represent real life very well because it will eventually reach 0, and that will mean the school system in Iowa is out of business, and that will never happen. A linear graph is pretty much an addition problem, so it's never going to go up. It's going to keep going down, and whichever way it starts off going in the very beginning, it will continue to go that direction. Meaning, if it starts off going up, it will continuously go up. If it starts off going down, it will continually go down. And that does not represent a very good graph because, like I said before, it will reach 0 eventually. Quadratic graph. This graph best represents the data that I was given, because it does not continuously go up and it does not continuously go down. It will get very close to 19, but it will never go above that, which is not a bad thing because 19 is very slightly above the recommended 15 to 1. This graph also never stoops below 0, and it will never go into the negatives. I feel like this graph is the best graph because the overall ratios are very close, meaning that the student-to-teacher ratio from the data I was given is very close to the quadratic graph equation. Cubic graph is not a very good representation of the data because it goes negative very quickly over 4 years. If the graph didn't go negative, it still would be a very poor choice because it drops very, very quickly. This is not realistic because a human ratio cannot go below 0. So this graph will eventually go back positive, but it went negative in the first place, so we can throw this graph out because it's pretty useless. Now we have the conclusion. As you can see by this data, the cubic goes down quickly, so we gotta throw that one out. The linear will continue to go down until it reaches 0, and it will go past 0 and go negative. But the quadratic will go down, but then it starts to go back up. And it will go past 15 and eventually come to 19 or very close to it. As you can see, well, not see, because the student-to-teacher ratio is very close to the quadratic, meaning that this is the best equation. I found that the quadratic was the best, the linear would be the second best, and the cubic really wasn't even an option. Quadratic best represents the data because it never goes negative. It, like the cubic, it also doesn't continuously go down like the linear. All my graphs seem to show a decrease in ratio and an increase, except for the linear. But the ideal ratio will be achieved in about 30 years, and it will climb up to 19 over an extended amount of time. Thank you for watching, and sincerely, Alex Knesset. And this is the final graph representing the ideal asymptotes and or the ideal ratio and the horizontal ratio.